Okay, so this is our training on how to add collaboratives and then record a collaborative strategic directions questionnaire. And you're going to start by going to that tab in High5 that is called collaboratives. Not everyone automatically has access to this. So if you don't have that tab, you need to make sure and request access to that. So when you go to the screen, it is blank to start with. So the first thing that you have to do is create your collaborative. And so you click on create new collaborative. Sorry, it's asking me to log in just because it's been, of course. Hold on, not sure what's happening. It took me to a different version. Hold on one minute, you guys. They asked me to do it in the sandbox, but we may not be able to. I might have to do it live and then we'll just delete the data later. Okay, I think we're working now. Maybe, yeah, okay. So when you click on create new collaborative, you'll type in the collaborative name. So I'm just gonna make one up as we go along. And click next. And you can either click next and it'll take you through the process, or you can click here and it takes you to the collaborative record. But if you go here, this basically takes you back to that list and you see that it's listed here as a collaborative. You will just see the collaboratives that you are responsible for and that you create listed here. But you know, there's ways to filter that, but we're not anticipating there's going to be a whole lot of them, at least especially at first. So if you click on the organization name, which is the collaborative name that you just created, it takes you to what is sort of the main record for that collaborative. Here it's called an organization. That just has to do with the structure of the database overall. The organization level is the same as the collaborative level in the database system. So before, the first thing that you want to do when you get started is you want to set up your collaborative. Collaboratives are generally made of different organizations and or contact people, right? And so the way that this is structured is that the contact people are associated with an organization. If you have contact people that are not associated with an organization, we're going to cover that in a minute. So stand by for that. But one of the first things that are in the instructions for you to do is to add organizations that are part of the collaborative. And you can do that by clicking here, add associate organization. So you can search for existing organizations that are in the database, or you can create a new organization to put in the database. And so when I'm going to copy this for Hoda. 1 second. So in the chat is a link to the guide that we're walking through. So I'm going to start with an example of just using an existing organization that's in the system and adding that. And so you see that it's now added here as an organization that is part of this collaborative that I added. And so when you can then go on to add the actual people that are part of it. I'm going to go ahead and add a new organization as well. So let's say that you've looked it up and it's an organization that's not listed in High5 because they likely don't have a contract or any other sort of formal association with the system. And so you type in the organization name. I'll put myself as an organization that is part of this. You can add addresses and everything. You do not have to. So that information is not required in the system as of this time. So then you see more than one organization listed here. The next thing you're going to want to do is just add the contacts, which would be the people who are sitting around the table within the collaborative. So up at the top again, there's add collaborative contact now.
You need me to.
So
Sorry,
in
go
this
ahead.
case, oh, do you have a question? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Nope, you answered it. Go ahead.
Okay. So in this case, when I click on add collaborative contact, you can see it lists the 2 organizations that I already have, or I could pick another one and add an organization this way. So you don't have to start with adding the organizations. You can do it actually in the reverse. You can start with adding the contacts and just kind of pick the organizations as you go as well. It works both ways. So in this case, I'm going to start with the Anaheim Global Medical Center because I want to show you some existing contacts. So when I select that organization and click next, it actually shows me someone who's already in the system under that organization, which is probably the user that works within High5, right? So I could select that person, or I could add a new contact under this organization. So let's say Ileana might be the person who, yes, does the data entry for them, but she's not the person sitting on the collaborative necessarily. So I'm going to add a new contact that's not listed within that organization. And the contact, those are the required fields with the stars next to them. And you see that that person is now listed as one of the contacts and under that organization. Okay. The other way that you can do that, as I mentioned, is adding a contact for an organization that is not listed. And you can, again, either search the organizations or create a new organization. In this instance, I think we're going to need if you have, do either of you have people who are part of a collaborative who are not going to be a member of an actual organization?
Would that include parents?
I believe so, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I think in this case, Christina, what we're going to need to do is create an organization called parent or parent member or something like that. So I would say create a new organization that is called parent member. And let's use that for all of your individuals who are parents. If you have a different category, let's say it's just, general community member or something like that, we might want to start doing that. So that's something that we probably are going to want to work on together, just to kind of make sure we're categorizing that, and we can follow up on that specifically on how you do those. But at this point, I would say definitely you're going to use a category of parent member. It makes sense. And then obviously that's going to be a new contact not listed because we don't have an organization with that name. And we will add that person.
Once that person is added, and now we have this parent member, so anyone who enters a parent would automatically be associated to parent member. So do we need to categorize that by subgroups so that if Christina has a particular engaged neighborhood, or that is there any reason we could think of that they would need to be linked and further categorized as opposed to just parent member? And it doesn't impact me now, but I'm just thinking that is an interesting way to think about it if we start grouping them that way. So if you're searching for parent member, you're going to end up with a list that may have the exact same name, for example.
Right. One of the things that First Five is looking at is building the database out for them to use on the administrative side for their contact management overall.
Right.
And what that looks like overall might be that a contact person might be in there, but they might have multiple roles, right? They might have multiple categories or multiple roles sort of assigned to them. So as we build out that contact layer, that might come back to this and play into this a little bit. For right now, I just want you to be able to get them in there.
That makes sense. That is helpful to know also, so that if they're being added in for this purpose, that they know that kind of like they're opting in to get mail. I think of it, like all the mail that we get, emails and things. Okay, thank you.
And as far as that's concerned, we're not automatically considering that if they're added in here, like you do have the ability to add their email, but you don't have to. Adding their email here doesn't mean necessarily that First Five is going to start just throwing them into their distribution, right?
Right.
That's not, we're going to, when that rolls out for them using this for distribution in a different way, they're going to handle that carefully and make sure people are opting in, and then that's handled sensitively. So I wouldn't, you don't need to make the assumption that because you're adding them here, they're going to start getting stuff from us.
That's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing that I want to do is add another, I want to add a contact that is, so I'm going to go back and add Anaheim Global. I am going to add Eliana Cerna, who is a current user in the system, because I want to show you when you're within the contact list of all the people who are part of this collaborative, if you click on one that is already a user, or for any of them, if you click on the number next to the name, it'll bring up sort of their record here, right, with their details. But in order to change, let's say that Eliana told you that she wants you to use a different email address. Say maybe for the collaborative purposes, she uses her personal email address for some reason, or a cell phone number rather than her office phone number or something along those lines. If you click update contact information, you'll be able to edit the data here. Now, actually, I'm noticing in this example, this didn't exactly show me what I was going to show you. So she must be listed in the system as a contact, but not a current user for some reason. Her access must not be turned on at the moment. If her access was turned on and you tried to edit this record, a red message would come up here that would say, you can't edit this because this is an active live user in the system. And it would instead allow you to send, when you click next with a change, it would actually pop up with a message that says, you can't change this information, but First Five has been notified. So what it would do is it would send an email to Jeanette Madrano that would let her know that you provided a different contact piece of information, and she would probably end up calling you or calling that person to say, hey, is this an official change that we need to change in the entire system, or is this just for this collaborative? Because we don't want to start changing user data for actual users that are using the system for other purposes, right? So let's say, for example, it was the instance where if she's using a personal email address for the collaborative, but uses this KPC Health email address for High Five and needs it to stay that way, then we're not going to change it in the system, because that KPC Health email address is the one that's going to receive sort of the automated notifications from First Five that have to do with invoicing and the reporting and those notifications that come through the automated High Five system. So we want to be careful with changing that information. You also can go here to delete user. Well, it doesn't delete the entire user, it just deletes them from the collaborative list if you click on that. Going back to the collaborative record, you can also do that from here. So let's say, for example, you decide that no, in fact, Eliana is not an actual member of the collaborative. You can click on the arrow next to her name and just click delete, delete. It will remove her from the list, but she's not gone from the system. It doesn't remove everything else. So you don't have to worry that if she's an existing user, you have deleted her from the system. So the idea here for the organizations and contacts is really just to give First Five context around the SDQ, who was involved, who participated in this. So it really should be a snapshot point in time for when the SDQ was completed. What I recommend is when they complete the SDQ, or when you do, somebody's making a list of who was there and where they're from, right? So that at the very least, you know who was involved in the conversation. And that's really what this is about. To this point, their direction for us has been, this is not something that they are expecting us to maintain as far as an active contact list or an active collaborative membership list. So let's say you fill out the SDQ and 2 months later, one of these people leaves the collaborative, or the membership who's attending from that organization changes or something like that. You don't need to go back in and change and maintain this. When you do the next SDQ, so let's say you do another one 6 months later, you will go back and edit this to match that SDQ at that time. But we're not going to keep it historically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful because I wasn't sure if they needed, if this would be used as a follow-up, but it's really just documenting participation. We're not expecting them to come
Correct.
in and do anything. Okay.
Correct.
So if the SDQ is completed in like a subcommittee, we would just write who participated in the subcommittee, not who participates in the entire.
They're completing it on behalf of the entire collaborative. So actually, that's a good point, Christina. I think that's a good point to make sure and clarify when we talk to Lisa again about these, just to see. I think because they're completing it. Well, I think I go both ways on that. I can't make the the call on that. I think that maybe we should get clarification from First Five on what they would prefer to see in that, or maybe based on what you would recommend as well and what you feel would make sense for your collaborative.
Okay.
I'm just making a note for follow-up on that. Okay. So the next thing you're going to do once your collaborative is all set up in the system, you're going to add the SDQ. And so you can literally sit and do all of this at once. It's not something that you have to go in and go back and do later. And once you're used to this, hopefully it won't take too much time to add all of this in. So entering the SDQ for the collaborative, you're just going to scroll to the bottom once you're on that collaborative screen. So let me go back here to just show you where we're at. So you're at the collaboratives tab. You go to the name of the collaborative and click on the name of the collaborative that you created. You have the organizations and the contacts. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll go to SDQ collaborative and click on new. And the window will come up. And everyone, can you see the window that popped up? Is that working right? Okay.
Yes.
So the window comes up that shows you that's really the data entry for the SDQ that was completed. So you'll select what year, what fiscal year this was for. Select whether it was the initial or mid-year. Currently, the way we have them set up is that there's an initial one for the fiscal year and then a mid-year check-in. At this point, because this was an initial implementation year, not everyone has done even one yet. So you can choose here what it is at this point. They have said that they're not, it's not impacting anything in the data as of right now to choose either initial or mid-year. So if they've never done one before and you want to pick initial, that's fine. Or if you want to show that they didn't complete it until February of 2021 and you want to say mid-year, that's okay too. We're figuring this out together until we get into a regular routine with this. Then you scroll down and start completing their what they selected. So under Seeks Community Voices, you would indicate what they selected and then comments. Every field is required in order to submit this information. So you will need to put in comments. There's these information boxes. I don't know that you guys will need them because I know that you're familiar with sort of what those categories are about. But if you need to, if you are interrupted and haven't gotten all the way through this and you need to save it, you can save it as long as it is still marked incomplete. And so it will be here listed in this section for you to be able to go back to. So if you go back to that right now, it's the strategic direction questionnaire, it's by number. We're going to have information added to that. So it just shows like what year it was and the, a little more information so you can tell once there's a list going of those. But that will come in an update. So if you just click on the questionnaire number, it will take you back to here. Since I didn't continue on that prior screen, it's not a pop-up window anymore. It's the actual just kind of regular interface. But if you've seen some of our other trainings on how to enter data, it's very similar at this point. You just click any of the pencils and the whole thing becomes sort of an editable field again, and you start going through and entering something for all of the responses. So I'm going to go through and just sort of select and enter selections and comments for all of these to get us to where we have a complete record. And then when you get to the bottom, you can save. Now, as you can see, it highlights them yellow as you go through to show you what you've just done. The other thing I'm going to do before I click save is I'm going to go ahead and mark it complete because I completed it. It won't let you do that if you left fields blank. You'll get an error message, but I've completed it. So I'm going to mark the status complete at the top and I'm going to click save. Some updates to come will be that we want to have an automatic notification sent to First Five. As of right now, that's not happening. So what I would recommend is that once you're done with this process, send an email to Lisa Burke, just to let her know that the record is complete. I would include Lamore in that as well. And then the last step before you close this screen is actually, and again, this may seem odd, but you're going to go ahead and mark it as reviewed. So at the top right, because you are acting as the collaborative member, entering it on their behalf, but then you are also the lead on behalf of First Five that took the information from them and you're just doing their data entry. So you're going to also mark it as reviewed. And it'll say reviewed by, and it'll have your information on the record after that. And that just kind of closes out the record and solidifies that so that no further changes can be made at that point. And then, as I said, just email Lisa and Lamore to let them know that that process is complete. So that is the process in a nutshell. What questions do you have left?
I know that one other thing, and not specific to the system, but I don't know if you have information to share. So Lisa had said, if you hadn't finished it yet, there's not a lot of pressure. This is kind of a pilot trial year, and we can wait until next year. For a variety of reasons in our program, we had this has now become even more impacted than it was before. So I'm thinking, realistically, we probably won't do it till next year. Do you think that there's any advantage to doing a self-report? I know we talked about trying to include the partners. Should I check in with Lisa to see if she wants us to do something just to test it out, or you know any feedback on that?
I think that that is a great idea. I don't know if they would want that data entered in, or they might just want you to send it. I know there's a Word template that many of us are using just as a way of facilitating the conversation with everybody and until we get it into the system. So I think that doing that is helpful. I don't know whether they would actually want that in the system. I actually have a meeting coming up this next week, or at the end of this week, with Lisa to talk about the SDQ and sort of some feedback on how the process has gone so far. And then I think from there, First Five is going to start making some decisions about whether they want to do any changes to that. So I think more to come, but I think that's a good suggestion. Okay. As far as doing that on your own and filling it out, and then
when we originally talked about this kind of on our home visiting team, we talked about, do we want to do two? So you're kind of comparing them. So we're completing it. as the project lead, the consultant, and then kind of facilitating the discussion around how we would opt for these with the group.
Right.
So, and that seemed like an interesting exercise. It's, over time was like, okay, that's not realistic. So I
Right.
didn't know if
Yeah.
a part of that would still be helpful, but I understand what you're saying, and not necessarily one
Yeah.
that commingled with the other reports that may be looking
Right.
at very specifically, knowing that they met with their collaboratives. So, so yeah, that makes sense. If you mention it to Lisa, you can let me know, or I can reach out to her myself. It's no problem.
Yeah, I can mention that when we have that meeting. There's it's actually about the SDQ and the ECAP, and there's those of us that have completed it with a collaborative. She wanted to kind of hear
Mhm.
how some of that went. So I'll mention it in that, but you're also, of course, you need to follow up and talk with her about it as well.
I think it looks pretty straightforward, Melinda. Thank you so much for walking us through it. I
Yeah,
can't think
no
of any
problem.
questions right now, but I feel like maybe once I start inputting, I might have one. But the resources are there, right? Is this part of the resource tab? Does it have the step-by-step
right,
on there?
yeah, for right now, this will actually be, it's going to be posted on the on the consultant intranet. The reason being that right now the resources tab is open to all users, and we just don't want to confuse folks, right? Because we do have
Yes.
collaboratives that are funded partners, and I don't want them to be like, wait, why can't I
Yes.
access that tab? So we are looking at upgrading the resources tab to where we can set permissions for each resource. So who can see what, we'll get there. That's hopefully coming. But for right now, yeah, they'll be on the intra. We also, just so that you know, another thing that we do recognize for this that people want is a report, so that you can basically spit it back out. Some people have said, can I get this into an Excel or some kind of format to get it back out, and that will be available in that report section that we're developing out coming forward. So
will the
more to come with
collaborative
that.
see that we submitted? So like if I'm submitting for SALE, will the SALE lead be able to see that it was submitted on their behalf?
No, they will not.
Okay.
That they don't have access to this at all. It's completely separate from them.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I agree with Christina. It seems very intuitive. We have the resources, and then you don't really know until you get in it.
Right.
And you can, start
Yeah.
with the guide you created, and then we'll follow up if we need it.
Yeah. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I hope
Thank you, Melinda.
all goes well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, you guys.